Alrighty, good afternoon. My name is Felicia Orth, hearing officer appointed by the New Mexico Water Quality Control Commission to conduct a hearing in the matter of proposed new rule 20.6.8 of the New Mexico Administrative Code relating to supplemental requirements for water reuse. This is our 8th day of hearing, and we have reached our second public comment session today. We will have, I think, at least a couple more public comment sessions tomorrow at 9 and tomorrow at 1, and each day that we continue the hearing before we finish. So just a few things about public comment. I will ask you to state and spell both your first and last name for the transcript. We're making a transcript. I will ask you, pursuant to the commission rules, to swear or affirm that you will tell the truth. And I will be running a stopwatch, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Let's see if this is better. Is this better? Okay. All right. I'm going to sit a little bit back here then. And I will be running a stopwatch. We have to limit public comment to 3 minutes each. In the event you have more than 3 minutes of statement to share with the commission, we invite you to put it into writing and to share it with Pam Jones, who's back here. She's the commission administrator. All written comment will be given, it will be made part of the record and given the same weight as oral comment. So let me run through the names that I have. Some folks are in the room, some folks are on the platform. Oh, one more thing. All of the testimony is interpreted between Spanish and English and Spanish. Lisa, would you please?
Did you want me to? Yeah. Good afternoon. For anybody that is here present that would like to listen in Spanish, then if you could please come up front and I can give you the headphones. Si hay alguien aquí presente que quisiera escuchar en español, por favor pase adelante y con mucho gusto les entrego los audífonos. If there's anybody that is online that would like to use the Spanish simultaneous interpreter function, you can do that by going to the bottom of your screen, clicking on the globe, and choosing Spanish. Si hay alguien que está participando en línea y que quisiera escuchar en español, puede acceder al canal de español, hacer clic en el globo y ahí puede escoger el español. If there's anybody that would like to give a comment in Spanish, you're more than welcome to. If it's possible, it would be great to have a written copy of that so we can review it before you speak. If you do want to give a comment in Spanish, if you could reach out to Pam Jones via WebEx. Si hay alguien que quiera hacer su comentario en español, por favor, con mucho gusto lo puede hacer, pero con mucho respeto le pedimos que nos entregue una copia, si lo tiene escrito, a Pam Jones y así lo podemos revisar antes que usted presente. I can put it on this channel. Let's see if it fits them.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. All right, let's start with Janet Wallet Ortiz. Ms. Ortiz, I believe you're on the platform.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, quite clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Janet Wallet Ortiz.
Spell your
Thank
name
you for the
record. Hold on. Spell your name for the record, please.
JANET WALLET-ORTIZ.
And thank you. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start your time now.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I've been a resident of Silver City, New Mexico for 40 years. I believe it is absolutely critical that the draft wastewater reuse rule is immediately amended to specifically prohibit produced water reuse because it fails to safeguard the water, land, and health of New Mexicans from toxins and poisons by not requiring the application of scientific standards to protect our water. NEMID is responsible for protecting our environment, but how can state employees even speculate about whether or not produced water meets standards if they do not have any data to make a sound decision? Oil and gas companies in New Mexico are in an expensive quandary about what to do with all of their produced water, which in New Mexico is 4 to 7 barrels of produced water with radioactive waste for every 9 barrels of oil produced. They are swimming in toxic produced water with heavy metal sludge at the bottom of each barrel. Oil does not want to take the expensive responsibility for their toxic leftovers, so they are now trying to pawn it off as an amazing solution to our current need for water in New Mexico due to ongoing mega drought. It is an incredibly brazen insult to New Mexicans to promote toxic polluted water as our solution, while records show that oil and gas consumed over 86,000 acre feet of fresh water to then turn around and produce, for our benefit, toxic water totaling over 266,000 acre feet. The hypocrisy is astounding. We must demand that this rule be revised immediately to prohibit the discharge, disposal, or reuse of treated or untreated produce water outside the oil field with no exceptions. Currently, the same rule has no requirement for measuring toxicity or radiation at input or output to ensure public safety. Clean water is life. Toxic water is disease, sickness, and death. Only 14% of the toxic chemicals in fracked water have been studied, with horrific results that just these have enough toxic potency to cause cancer and other diseases in humans. Justin Noble, author of Plutonium-238, reported that the oil industry has spent $500 million in at least one experiment trying to treat produced water to no avail. Overwhelmingly toxic is overwhelmingly toxic, period. This draft rule folds neatly into the plans of oil and gas to continue using New Mexico as a dumping ground. We must be the brick wall that stops them cold. Our land, our water, and our bodies refuse to be receptacles for their toxic mess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wallet-Ortiz. Rebecca Roos. Ms.
Hello.
Roos?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're going to have to raise your voice just a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I'll get closer to the microphone.
Thank you. That's perfect. Would you spell your first and last name, please?
Rebecca, Rebecca. Last name is Roos, Roose.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
thank you. Thank you, members of the commission, for your time in this hearing. My name is Rebecca Roos. I'm the infrastructure advisor in the Office of the Governor. And it's my privilege today to join you and make some brief public comments about the ongoing rulemaking for water reuse. I want to just encourage you all to, as you continue your work, obviously continue taking in all the input. I know you're hard at work with this continuation from the start of the hearing in May, and appreciate all the effort that's going into it, both on the commission and all the parties who are participating. The rule brought forward, the petition brought forward by the department was many years in the making, very thoughtfully developed, including through engagement with stakeholders from diverse groups and perspectives and a range of expertise before the petition was even filed, and ongoing coordination between the department's team and experts with many of the people in the room with you today or participating in the hearing remotely, to put forward a thoughtful rule that is that meets the moment of where we are and sets us on the path forward that we need to be on for water reuse. The fact is we have a lot of opportunity to move our water programs forward in a way that is rooted and grounded in sound science and is a stepwise and careful approach. And I believe that that's the role that's before you. And part of my perspective and role as infrastructure advisor is to think big and strategically about our infrastructure needs and priorities across the state, and also ensure that we're leveraging federal funding effectively, and utilizing state funding and private sector resources and partners effectively to meet our infrastructure challenges and build a more resilient New Mexico. And components of this rulemaking are key elements to put us on ensure we continue on the right path for leveraging federal funding that's out there for water reuse projects, investing in everything from the research, the science and technology development to projects that show the benefit of putting treated water to use in to meet our clean energy goals, our diversifying our economy, and more. So I just want to commend the Environment Department team for the work that they've put into this. Again, appreciate the work the Commission is dedicating to this rulemaking process, and appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Roos. Carolyn Houses. Carolyn Houses. On the platform. Okay. William Clark. William Clark. Peggy Baker. Peggy Baker. You may have stepped away. Paul Coonley. Paul Coonley is in the room. Oh, that's fine. What about Cheryl Coonley? Are you speaking? You are, correct. Come up to the table, please. And that microphone, I think, is the better one. And if you would press the button, so that's okay. Press the button so the light is green. All right. And if you would state and spell your first and second name.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Cavazos Coonley. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. My husband Paul and I are here today because
Hold
we have
on.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
You have to spell your names for the
I
transcript.
forgot.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Cheryl, Sheryle, Cavazos, Cavasos, Coonley, Auhnley.
And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes now.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commission. I'm happy to be here today. My husband Paul and I are here today because we have an interest in a healthy environment for our family and state, which includes not only pure, clean, and available water here in our high desert, but also an awareness that the oil industry plays a very important part in our state's economy and our nation's future. Our state is very dependent on the money our gas and oil industry brings to it. About half of our general fund revenue is used from that. 58% of that goes to our state's schools and universities. My husband is a New Mexico native. He grew up on a dairy farm south of Moriarty. He knows how critical our need for water is here in New Mexico. He also knows the part gas and oil play in the farming industry. We must take care of our country's food producers. We're very grateful for the hard work farmers do for our nation and never take them for granted. Paul is a retired milkman. He was an independent distributor for Creamland Dairies. He began delivering house to house in Albuquerque, but soon began delivering to businesses and schools. He drove our milk truck for 48 years, putting well over 1 million miles on it. My father, also a New Mexico native, who grew up in Stanley, New Mexico with our former governor, Bruce King. was in the Air Force. We lived in San Francisco, Denver, Japan, Massachusetts, and Texas before he retired and brought us to Moriarty when I was in high school. I am a retired APS math teacher and math coach, but my avocation has been in taking students on mission and service trips to Mexico and here in the U.S. On one trip to Aquiles, Mexico, our group ran a water line from a natural spring at the top of the mountain to the little village. When I retired from APS, I taught middle school math at Albuquerque Christian School for 5 more years. We took our 7th grade to Ruidoso each fall to help clean up pine needles as fire prevention, and our 8th grade to Texas to serve the homeless and do work in hurricane disaster areas. My husband and I also support groups who dig wells in third world countries. 2 weeks ago, we spent the weekend in Ruidoso. Our daughter works for New Mexico Horse Breeding Association. The fires and flooding that have hit this beautiful New Mexico town were devastating. After returning, I read that they had to put back in place the no drinking water restrictions for the Upper Canyon. Traveling in areas such as this has made me thankful for our focus on safe and clean water in the United States and here in New Mexico. We should never take that for granted. Discussions such as these today are very important. I hope you will also keep in mind the importance of oil and gas and ask that you support the oil and gas industry in New Mexico. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Quinley.
It's your name.
Oh, Peggy Baker is ready now. All right. Ms. Baker, can you hear me? Ms. Baker? Right, she may have stepped away again. Juliana Funkhaus? Juliana Funkhaus?
That's me. Can you hear me? I'm online.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. If you would please spell your first and last name for the transcript.
Of course. It's Giuliana. And Funkhauser is Funkhousser.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Juliana Funkhauser, tuning in from Utuado, Puerto Rico. In 2019, I participated in several investigations through the Resolana Art Collective research group to better understand how toxic and nuclear waste from industrial and military activities was being managed, stored, and dumped around the USA. While our project's focus was on the commonalities between efforts and subsequent leaks associated with such activities around Hunters Point in the San Francisco Bay Area, within rivers and subterranean lakes around Carlsbad, New Mexico, I privately noted the similarities to chemical weapons and herbicidal development around rainforests in Puerto Rico as well. Coal ash examples brought up earlier in this hearing are also an issue that Puerto Ricans have been grappling with very similar results. A through line noted by our research group amongst all these cases is an effort to reuse, store, or simply dump industrial refuse without fully comprehending the health and environmental consequences. Offloading the inconvenience of costly cleanup with the burden of toxic and radioactive effects placed on the land and the peoples of the affected areas is not a tenable solution, but unfortunately, it is a very common one, it seems. I'm here in solidarity with my fellow New Mexicans who kindly invited us to share and celebrate life through art all those years ago. My perspective was deeply shifted and moved while pondering what sort of effects recent fracking activities were having on the ancient lakes and rivers housed in the Carlsbad Caverns. Considerate water management and a healthy carcinogen-free environment is essential for the flourishing of any environment. Please do not allow your homes to be poisoned by reckless activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Funkhauser. Doyle Caton? Doyle Caton? Okay, Ms. Baker, can you hear me? Okay. Mike Fuller. Mike Fuller. Annie Cook. Oh, great. First, spell your name for the transcript.
Annie Cook, A-N-N-I-E, D as in Delta, Cook, C-O-O-K.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Annie Cook. I've been a resident of New Mexico since 1971 when I moved here from Kansas. New Mexico is home to me. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else. Both of my sons were born here. I myself am a graduate of UNM. I'm a master's prepared RN who retired in 2013 from the VA in Albuquerque after 30 years of service. My husband of 32 years and I own a home on the west side of Albuquerque, and we're totally invested in the land of enchantment and its preservation, not only for our family, but for all the families who live here. Today, I'd like to speak with you regarding the importance of reusing water within the petroleum industry. I'm referring to the practice of treating and recycling water used during oil and gas production. And this is important for several reasons. One, environmental conservation. Oil and gas extraction processes need significant amounts of water. Reusing water decreases the amount of fresh water consumption, reducing the impact on local water resources, especially in regions like New Mexico, where scarcity of water is a concern. Regulatory compliance. Because of regulations governing the use and discharge of water in industrial activities, reusing water reduces the volume of wastewater that requires disposal. Technological advancements. Advances in water treatment technologies make it feasible to treat water extracted along with oil and gas and other types of wastewater to a quality suitable for reuse in industrial purposes. Risk management. Recycling water reduces the risks associated with obtaining water from environments which have less available water or from areas where water resources may be in conflict. In practice, water reuse in the petroleum industry involves treating produced water and other wastewater streams to remove contaminants like salts, hydrocarbons, and heavy metals. Once treated, the water can be used for hydraulic fracturing, cooling, and dust suppression at drilling sites. Today, I urge you to approve water reuse in the petroleum industry. Allowing for the treatment and reuse of water represents our commitment to sustainability and efficient resource management, addressing operational efficiency and water conservation in our great state, which is a vital issue for all of us who call the land of enchantment home. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak on this important issue of water reuse in our natural gas and oil industry in New Mexico.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cook. Mary Green. Mary Green. David, oh, wait. Oh, are you Mary Green?
Mary Green.
Oh, you are. Terrific. Thank you. My attention is divided between the screen and the room. Have a seat, please.
Thank you.
And if you would spell your first and last name for the transcript.
Mary Green, M-A-R-Y. Green like the color, G-R-E-E-N.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
So we're here to talk about produced water. And I'm not a scientist, but I know that the items in it are carcinogenic and radioactive. I live up in Taos and I've been there 40 years, but I was a child of the military. And my father retired after being the field commander, 5th Air Force, Vietnam. But before that, he was Strategic Air Command, Squadron Commander for Missile Silo Squadron. And he thought that that was safe for his soldiers and to invite me and my Girl Scout troop. And I went, I was in the silo 20, 30 minutes at the age 15 or 16. And 40 years later, my left side of my thyroid blew up 40 years later. Not 5, not 10. So in my mid 50s, with no other exposure to radiation, my thyroid swelled up. And now 20 years later, both sides of my thyroid are blown up and I have to deal with thyroid complications in my body, although I don't have cancer. And I'm treated and monitored. So I want you to understand.
I'm sorry, Ms. Green. I think Lisa's going to help with your microphone. I'll stop you at the clock.
Oh, does that work? Is that better? Okay, so
Go ahead.
I'm treated and monitored. But my father acted in good faith with what he was told. He would never have exposed me or anyone to radioactive substances that last longer than the known history. So I want you to know that you must regulate this. You must act with great care. And you do not have my permission to use produced water outside the oil field, in agriculture, or anything else until you can prove to me scientifically by appropriate scientists and peer-reviewed process that it's safe. Please do not go forward with this. Do not do harm. Please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Green. David Tobin Estelle. He's here in the room. If you would spell your names for the
Hi, my name is David, D-A-V-I-D. Last name is Tobin, T-O-B-I-N, hyphen, E-S-D-A-L-E.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
great. Thank you very much. I was here this morning to listen to the chemist from Duke University, and it was really quite an extraordinary testimony. I've been a resident of New Mexico since 2000. I've gone to school in Santa Fe in the 1970s, and I've been a resident here. Had at one time been a science teacher, and I'm a retired school bus driver right now. New Mexico is one of the poorest states in the country. We have a legacy of mining and oil and gas drilling. There are wells right now in New Mexico that have not been plugged. They are hemorrhaging cancer-causing chemicals. We are here right now to consider rules to make oil and gas drilling a little more healthy. If the past experience is any indication of the future, then we will be left with a legacy of cancer and death. I'm not somebody who is religious. I think God put oil and gas miles down. It should be left there. If we try to bring it up to where we live and let it intermix with our biosphere, it will cause us to be sick. It'll cause us to vomit and have diarrhea. And we're also discovering that bringing it up and putting it into the atmosphere is destroying our environment. So my own feeling is, let's look at ways to transition to a more humane way of living on the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Davi Soledad Garcia. Ms. Garcia?
Thank you. My name is Davi Soledad Garcia. My name is spelled DAVI SOLEDADGARCIA.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
I'll start your 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Davi Soledad Garcia. I hold a PhD in anthropology from the University of Texas at Austin.
Oh, hold on. I'm very sorry.
Go ahead.
You're speaking too fast for the court reporter and the interpreter. And
No problem. I'll slow down.
it is also very echoey. So I'm just going to ask you to slow way down.
No problem. Okay. My name is Davi Soledad Garcia. I hold a PhD in anthropology from the University of Texas at Austin. I'm from El Huache, New Mexico, in Rio Arriba County. My family and I are Acequia Parciantes on the Acequia de los Salazares, which draws its water from the Rio Chama. For more than 5 generations, this water source has been the basis of my family's survival. It's a delicate resource that is under threat of contamination and degradation. Water sources like acequias in the state are foundational to local Chicanx and Latinx culture. The agriculture that acequias bring to the state is significant and serves as a viable economic counterpoint to industries that contaminate and degrade our environment. Growing up, my grandmother, Frances Garcia, would ask her grandchildren to bring her water to drink. It was a serious matter, a ritual that taught us respect for the value of water as a life bringer. We would hand her water, cross our arms, and listen to her words, wisdom, and consejos. At the end, my grandma would finish drinking her water, always leaving some in reserve to confer a bendición, a blessing. Having available water is vital. My family has a small farm where we harvest apples and alfalfa. This way of life is threatened by the proposal of allowing contaminated and hazardous substances, such as the so-called produced water, to be discharged into the surface and groundwater of our communities. I've come today to defend the water and speak on its behalf for Acequia communities and other traditional communities in the state who depend on its life-affirming sacramental qualities. I am concerned about produced water being discharged because, one, these substances contain unknown, patented, and radioactive materials that make treatment truly unfeasible, and that treatment may even uses up more water for cleanup. The oil and gas industry already has had record profits in the last couple of years. Why do we need to hand them our state's most sacred treasure for them to destroy? 3, produced water discharge would be detrimental to acequias and its members economically, culturally, and spiritually, and it would lead to the deterioration of our communities. New
Wait,
Mexico.
Hold on. You have to slow down.
Okay. Any potential. Okay, I'll start my last comment. New Mexico already has a limited source of water with so much climate change. Any potential spills of water, this discharged water, would jeopardize local population survival and would amount to ecological and cultural genocide for the traditional cultures and wildlife that depend on it. I advocate for complete prohibition of discharge water, um, and because it endangers our state's already limited clean surface and groundwater. SECAs put water to beneficial use, bring culture, food, livelihoods to communities. I would also affirm to cite NMAA's submitted comments to this commission, and for the sake of the public interest, I ask you to prioritize New Mexico's water, environment, people, and all the needs of its living things over the needs of corporations. We're not building a better future for tomorrow. Please protect our clean water, which our communities do not consider just a resource or commodity for sale. As my grandma taught me, water is our blessing, it's your blessing, and it's sacred. Aguas vida.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you a question, though. We are
Yes.
trying to capture every word of everyone's statement
I
for
can
the record.
submit it.
And would you be willing to email your written comment, because it sounded like you were reading from something, to Pam Jones?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Nat Rusa. Nat Rusa.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Is this volume okay?
Yeah, it's just a touch loud maybe, but it's good.
All
Would
right,
you
I'll
spell your name for the transcript, please?
sure. My name is Nat and last name is Roosa.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Okay. I'll be brief. My name is Nat Brusa. I'm 27 years old and a resident of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I moved here from the East Coast in search of a better way of life, and I do believe that I found it here. I am a soon-to-be nursing school graduate in 2 days. But I do fear that my years in New Mexico may be numbered because of the water crisis here. And I was recently made aware of the produced water issue in New Mexico. I have serious concerns about our state's handling of the produced water issue, and I believe that it is an essential time to ban the discharge of produced water to ground and surface, as well as any so-called experiments or projects that attempt to reuse this water. There is no reliable evidence that cleaning produced water is effective. It is a poison to our ecosystem during an already fragile time. We need to be using scientific efforts to work on conserving clean water. Safely containing produced water should be the responsibility of those who produce it. The burden should not be shifted onto the people and ecosystems of New Mexico. Please prohibit the discharge of produced water to ground and surface, and do not allow these companies to conduct experiments with radioactive waste on the land we rely on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rusa, I'm going to make the same request of you, just because we're hearing such echoing in the room. If your
Okay.
if your statement has been written out and you would send it to Pam Jones, that would help.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, I believe you just readmitted Miss Baker. All right, Ms.
Yes.
Baker, can you hear me?
Yes, finally. Thank you. My name is
Hold
Peggy.
on.
Okay.
Peggy Baker. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I had the spelling of your name yesterday, and I swore you in yesterday. I'll start your 3 minutes now.
Okay. Thank you. My well, first of all, I'd like to thank your commissioners and you as a hearing examiner for this opportunity to comment. And a little bit about my background. I am retired, but I have been a hazardous material and hazardous waste manager professionally for over 30 years. My degree is in physics and environmental cleanup. And
I have some concerns about the proposed rule as written. It seems to be the case that there's no permitting requirement at this time for produced water and other waste streams for benchmark and scale up. And I wonder how this is going to work because to leave the oil and gas operation site, there has to be transportation and there has to be a permit process in order to allow removal from that site. So given looking at the RFI list that was submitted yesterday as exhibit, 21, I believe, there are a number of people in the RFIs who are interested in providing treatment services, and the rule as written suggests that these service companies are going to have to characterize what's in the produced waste, and that's going to be quite variable depending on what geological strata it's coming from and what kind of fracking fluids and chemicals may have been used. The economies of scale would probably dictate that there are going to be multiple transportation of this produced water from the oil and gas operation site to a different, more central location where treatment for combined streams can be done. And in addition, the rule as it's written says that these service providers for treating produced water will have to help develop waste stream characterizations, and there'll be different waste streams probably depending on where the produced water is coming from.
Ms. Baker, would you wrap up, please?
Yes, so my concern is that you're essentially allowing a gap when the service providers are the ones who are going to recommend the standards, and probably those are going to be related to how successful their treatment is rather than something that your NMED and Water Commission are responsible for establishing public health protective, not just what can be achieved. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Do you have William Clark with you, or?
Mr. Clark had an unexpected family emergency. He is going to be sending in his written comments, if that is acceptable.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Caulfield? Stephanie Caulfield. Carol Eason? Are you Carol Eason? Terrific. Come on up to the table if you would. You would press the button on the microphone so it's green. Yeah, I hope it's green.
There we go.
And if you would spell your first and last name.
My name is Carol Eason, CarolEason.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
I'm here to talk about water reusage. Speaking of water, I used to play water polo, but I had to quit. My horse got seasick, and besides that, he kept dropping the mallet. I guess I should have gotten a seahorse. Now, here are a few things about me. I'm a Western artist, a writer, poet, martial artist, stuntman, singer, songwriter, designer, producer, director, actor, acting coach, voice actor, TV host, and a bunch of other stuff. Oh, I almost forgot, treasure hunter. At one point back in my treasure hunting days, my partner and I came within a hair's breadth of getting into a real life, honest to goodness, Old West type of gunfight. However, the other guys we were facing backed down eventually. And of course, we dealt with all that manner of specters and ghosts and such, good and bad, believe it or not. Okay, now water reusage. I wish to go on record by stating my absolute support of the reuse of such a valuable commodity. It is and always will be beneficial, not only for the oil and gas industry, but other industries as well. In my opinion, water is just too valuable a resource to waste and be cavalier about its usage. As far as I'm concerned, reusage of water is absolutely an idea whose time has definitely come. I believe that. I do. The reusage by all industries just makes sense, doesn't it? Please consider the oil and gas industry along with other industries during your rulemaking period. We need to take care of today, or we may not have it tomorrow. By the way, you may have noticed that the three letters in the exact middle of the word reusage is USA. That's got to mean something. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope I made a positive impact.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eason. Jack Bishop? Jack Bishop? Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you could spell your name first.
Yes, Jack, J-C-K, last name Bishop, B-I-S-H-O-P.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
I have a tenure of combined years of 20 for the state of New Mexico. I left and moved to North Carolina about 15 years ago, and I'm back. I worked in the state of Texas for 10 years as a commercial licensed water well driller, and I know the critical issues of water sources. I reside in Lybrook, New Mexico. I'm water board there. We know that the aquifer is getting depleted, and I feel that water conservancy is a very serious issue in many forms. The utilization of brackish waters or oilfield waters and other sources, I think, should be, studied and researched to the procreation of the usage, because it's such a serious issue that if we could get to this point, that I think, being able to utilize those waters, if they're studied enough and it's safe enough to be put out, that, then our water aquifers through our ground aquifers will replenish themselves through the years. And I'm grateful to be a part of this state. I'm grateful that I can share my voice, because I do have a great concern for our water sources in the state, because it's critical all over the United States. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop. Kenneth Brennan. Hello, if you'd give us the spelling of your name.
Kenneth, K-E-N-N-E-T-H, Brennan, B-R-E-N-N-A-N.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
I'll start your 3 minutes.
All right, thank you for listening to me today. As I said, my name is Kenneth Brennan, and my family moved to New Mexico in '75.
Would you slow down just a little?
The Bostonian in me always comes out. I graduated Cibola High School, class of '79, and I joined the Navy in 1980, retiring from the Navy in 2000. I worked for a GE company from 2000 to 2023 as a gas turbine field engineer, wind turbine commissioner and maintenance technician, and as a manager of wind turbine technicians for the last 17 years. Currently, I am the Edgewood Commissioner for District 1 and serve as the town's mayor. Previously, I've spoken before the body in regards to the issue of reusing processed water. I spoke to the process that the Navy uses to turn seawater into fresh and the ability to clean contaminated water so that it can be discharged back to the sea. That has not changed, and I stand by those statements. Water is a precious resource. Municipalities will take wastewater from the sewer systems and clean it up so it's processed and be able to use it in watering, landscaping, and used for road dust control and other non-potable uses, providing it does meet the EPA standards. The use of good drinking water should be avoided for anything other than agricultural and residential needs. We are still basically looking at the same thing here. Take the water used in the oil and gas production and clean it to a standard so it can be reused in oil and gas processes or used for other non-potable needs. By continuing to reuse this water, less fresh water, less preserving the precious water for the agricultural and residential needs. Now, with this does come great responsibility for all. The industry must prove that it can properly treat and clean this water. The government must regulate the process. And most importantly, the public must be kept informed on all the actions of both sides and have a voice in that process. Science advances because people push beyond the known and into the what if. The electron collider was thought to cause a black hole that would destroy the Earth. The sound barrier could never be reached, and a human body could never survive it. A human heart could never be implanted into another, and the list of the what coulds or could not goes on. The thing is this: knowledgeable people opposed all those ideas and many others, and yet those ideas have come to be able to be profitable and usable for the people and betterment of mankind. The energy industry does say that they can go ahead and take the water and purify it and make it safe. Then we need to let them prove it, and to the government and to the people that this can be done. The government needs to monitor and approve each step with the aid of experts from both sides. And by doing this, you can keep both sides honest. The end benefit is this: if it works, we save more water. And if it doesn't, we keep on looking for another way to make it work. I feel that it can be done, and one of the most valuable resources we have, water, is then preserved for all. Many innovations take time to perfect, but those innovative advancements will never happen until people actually try. Please let the industry try to make this work. It can work for the people, but once again, like I said, they got to be able to prove it. Once again, I thank you for letting me speak here today. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Steve Epstein. Steve Epstein. Oh, terrific. Spell your name, please.
Steve Epstein, STEVEEPSTEIN.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
I am retired after 26 years of service to the state of New Mexico. And now in my golden years, I am active in outdoor recreation, requiring our scarce water resources. I enjoy skiing, kayaking, and swimming. Golf is on my bucket list as I was gifted a bag of left-handed golf clubs. Accordingly, I am excited about expanding water reuse in our state. Reused water can be used for snowmaking at New Mexico's great ski resorts. Our beloved golf greens can be sprinkled with reused water. And to escape this heat, many New Mexicans are flocking to swimming pools that need to be constantly refilled with water. Okay, thanks for allowing me to present, and please approve the expanded water reuse proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Dolores, not sure what the last name is there. Oh, yes, thank you. I just couldn't read the handwriting. You would spell your name for the transcript first.
Okay. Delora Jesus, DELORAHESUSE.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
I'll start your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Water Commissioners. My name is Delora Jesus. I am a Navajo Alati from Nyazi and Liebrecht, New Mexico. Many people don't understand our Native American heritage and the fact that many individual Navajo Nation members, such as I, call Alatis own private lands and minerals underneath them. These lands were given to our great-grandparents to exchange for citizenship, and we have rights as citizens and landowners to develop our lands for oil and gas as we see it. I have participated along with other Navajo Alatis in many environmental reviews, meetings, and planning process over decades. We are very active and careful about how we use our water and develop our oil and gas. I frequently go out to a recycling water site in Kimboto, New Mexico, that is 4 miles from my home. I have been checking and observing that site, and it's always been clean and well maintained. Water being used in the Nyazi area by the companies. Operators are using temporary lay flat above ground lines to monitor water from supply sources to wells being completed. 1, this reduces truck traffic volumes. 2, and it associates emissions, including dust. The lay flat lines are also utilized in existing roadways and pipeline routes. The lay flat lines are always closing, monitored during their use. Water supply wells. Some operators are drilling water supply wells to the strata formation water. From this formation is non-potable, non-considerate fresh water, and offer a source of water for completion activities. Some operators are blending produced water with entrada water for use in completion with these activities. To the best of my knowledge, the activities being conducted in the immediate area where I live, Nyazi chapter house boundaries, use this approach for water management when completing oil and gas wells. We have a good relationship with all the oil companies. I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jesus. Is there anyone else in the room? Ma'am, come up to the table. And you as well. Tell me your name. All right, I called earlier, but I'll call you next. Okay. Hello. If you would state and spell your names.
My name is Patricia Vasquez, Patricia Killeen Vasquez. That's Patricia Killeen, Vasquez, Vasquez.
And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm a resident of Albuquerque and a member of many organizations for 20 years, including PTA and a lot of soccer clubs. A decade, I've been in New Mexico an educator for 30 years, and I am a national golf demographics researcher. My sister is a golf executive in Portland. So my heritage for more than 120 years has been to support the cattle and livestock industry here in New Mexico. My father was a beef producer, an order buyer. My grandfather, a partner in Swift Meats. He was the partner of Swift and Henry of Kansas City. And my great-grandfather was the superintendent of the Chicago stockyards. So my feelings and my knowledge of fracking is heartfelt, and I've been thinking about it for New Mexico. I've been in the hospitality industry for many years. I'm 64, and I stand before you and implore you protect New Mexico's water and soil by banning fracking for our state, our great state. I spent 3 years with my husband, who is a media content provider in Spanish at the Pemex complex in Mexico City. I've seen their aquifers, toured the world, and I saw 17 nuclear power plants. And I've spent hundreds of hours with the Baker Institute in Houston, learning as a student, basically, energy innovation. My sister's a soil biologist. My brother's a 40-year veteran of South American oil and gas botany restoration, Dr. Tim Killeen. And so I think for this state, we turn around, we stop. Recently, I was on a flight to Portland from Albuquerque on Spirit, and they flew along the Mexican border. And I was shocked at all the economic development that has evolved along the border. This requires water, clean water. So with repurposing, I guess I don't know all of the rules. In golf, I've seen it used a lot. Thousands of golf courses, municipal, private, and all of them.
Please wrap up.
So anyway, I was also trained as a stationer. So I live next to Intel, and Intel supports a clothing bank. I made these flowers with eagles, and I'd like to share them for your desk to remind you that we have a beautiful state. And so here's a little show and tell about what Kansas looks like when there's no water.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. Mr. Caton? If you would spell your first and last name, please.
First name is Doyle, D-O-Y-L-E. Last name, Caton, C-A-T-O-N.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Okay, first I'd like to say I'm not an expert in anything. I'm 90 years old. I've spent a good part of my life gathering, analyzing, and moving information as a strategic intelligence analyst, and mostly with NASA and moving scientific and technical information. On almost any of those subjects, I can find the source and answer the questions, but it wouldn't have time to do it now. However, I grew up in Oklahoma in the oil patch. My family lost 3 Sweetwater wells in the 70s, 60s that broke, and it was because a law of 1919 was broken. That law required the operators, if they abandoned a well that didn't have enough oil, to plug it below the Sweetwater veins. A lot of people didn't do that. When they started secondary recovery in the 50s and 60s, pushing salt water in to move the oil out, water came back up and ruined our wells. But right now, I can guarantee you, having spent a lot of my life in the technological world, particularly with NASA, water can be cleaned and energy is needed. And it's a matter of human behavior and enforcement and making it happen. The technology is there, the resources are there. It's the job of managing it. And if anyone would like to find any information on that, I could probably put you in touch with someone that knows a lot more than I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caton. Is there anyone else in the room who's here to offer comment at this session? We will have another session at 9 in the morning and another session 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And again, you always have the option of submitting a written statement to Pam Jones anytime before we adjourn. All right, let's go back to the technical, sorry?
It's for us to recycle this sound system.
Should we take a 10-minute break? Is that what? Okay. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 2:15.
You know? Right? Nice.
I don't understand if it's like in one specific section. But on the way it looks spread out, so it's going to make me too long. So be it. You guys are there, the people are going to leave because of vacancy. Then something else is going on here. Okay. Because, you know, like I said, a lot of this stuff is. It hurt my head. Yeah. Here's that. Feels like you're really. I know.
Mic test 1, 2, 3. Mic test 1, 2, 3. Mic test 1, 2, 3. It still sounds like it like comes and goes.
Last month, right? Was so much better. But not that bad yesterday.
I mean, we've been having issues intermittently. Pam, do you need me to keep talking? We're good? Okay.
And he is outstanding. Only 6'1", but he jumps out of the gym. Going to go basketball first. 8'8". Martin and Martin. Both teams come in on a similar trajectory in 2024, very light schedules. Rumors and injuries along the way, both looking for a little bit of groove that they have found here at the Olympic Games.
He's our AV.
Mr. Maxwell, there's a request. If you're at your computer, if you could please turn your mic on and say something so we can make sure we've worked out the issues with the audio here in the hearing room.
This is Nick. Can you hear me over the microphone?
All right, we're not able to hear you. Is that computer unmuted?
Can you hear me now? Testing, testing.
Try again.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
No, we're not able to hear you just yet.
Okay.
Right, but we can't.
No, you'd think after 4 years of doing this, we'd have it down.
Well, we did have it down when it was all on
This is
Zoom.
complicated. This is complicated.
Testing. Can you hear me at this time?
Nicholas, could you try one more time?
Yes. Hey, this is Nick. Can you hear me over the webcast? Testing, testing.
Could you speak one more time, please?
I sure can. Testing. Can you hear me? I can hear you, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good deal.
Let's come back from the break, please. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
No, it sounds like.
All right, we are back after a short break. Dr. Van Gosh, if you are on the platform, would you turn your camera on again? And Ms. Nanasi, come back to the front table, please. Ms. Taylor? Oh, okay. Okay.
You back on?
Okay. Yes. Oh, is Dr. Van Gosh on the platform?
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you are. Terrific. All right, we are back after a lunch break and a lengthy public comment session. We are returning to the technical case. Apparently, Commissioner McWilliams, who is on the platform, was unable to unmute herself earlier. So let me ask Commissioner McWilliams if you have questions of Dr. Van Gosh.
Yes, this is Commissioner McWilliams. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. No, I do not have any questions. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Commissioner Fry, I understand you have questions.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on some things that Chair Thompson was asking about. And you had mentioned having third-party observers, which I thought was an interesting idea. But I was wondering, you have seen the proposed rules, correct?
Correct.
And did you look over the notice of intent section?
I may, I'm not sure now specifically what you're referring.
So let's see, forget where down it is. It's in 20.6.8.400 and it's like towards the bottom, like the last 1/3. And I'm just curious if you reviewed those, because in my mind, it addresses a lot of what you're talking about. Maybe not specific to third-party observers, but for example, it says for notice of intent, they must include. Let me see it. Now I can't find it. But they must report data back to the state, which I think, it's worth verifying with the state, would this be public record? But would that get at a little bit of the ability of people to verify the data?
Well, when you do, we are talking now, we are not talking about, it's important to emphasize that in this stage of, at least my understanding, you're talking about a research. You're not talking about kind of a routine process, which you are taking wastewater and you have regulation and you are having that. You're doing experiment, which you want to see how you could treat the water and what is the validity of those treatment facilities and how good they are to be able to meet the standards. So the language in the new ruling doesn't really, it's very vague and very not specific. So bringing data to the commission doesn't mean anything really. What data? What kind of data they were going to bring? Maybe they bring only the data that they like to show. How transparent is the process? So in this
and in this kind of experiment that you're talking about, it sounds like research. And when you're doing research, you have to get peer review evaluation on your research. And that's the idea of a third party validation to see if the research that was conducted is following up all the rules of what you do when you're conducting such a research. So this, I think the language in this new rule is not enough. It's not sufficient. It's great that they bring the data for evaluation and making a public access, but how do you know that this is the only data? How do you know that this is comprehensive? What data it would contain? Is it contain all constituents that we know exist in oil produced water? Does it including data of constituents that the oil industry in fracking additives that are not revealed to the information to the public thus far? So this kind of language is too it's too kind of lame and too general to really evaluate how good this experiment is going to be performed and how the quality of the treated oil produced water going to be achieved through this kind of experiment.
If anyone, it says implementing a demonstration project, excuse me. If they have within the rule, they are to report all lab analyses, but all water contaminants in untreated produced water and treated produced water, to help develop standards and regulations. You don't feel like that's enough? Like, what more do you think should be in there? Like, if we were just to fix that section.
Yes, I need this section to be elaborate and to be very specific, or to include all the contaminants. The determination of standard cannot be determined by the entity who conducting the experiment. It should be conducted by the commission or by other entities, not by the people on the ground who are doing this experiment. My point is that in the language that is not specific, you can put everything. You can put, oh, I've removed that constituent and therefore in that percentage and everything is fine. You need to make sure that the self kind of imposed things that mentioned earlier by one of the commission is indeed happening. And unfortunately, from my experience, it doesn't work in the real world. It doesn't work where the industry, any type of industry, having their own ruling and their own monitoring to be the way to protect the environment. It maybe sounds very harsh and radical, but that is the fact that we see all across the US. Then we have different types of industries. When they have self-regulation, it doesn't work. So we need, and you need, to protect, as your aim, your mission is protect water and soil and health in New Mexico, is to establish the correct parameters of this experiment in which you define what are the known parameters, what are the unknowns, including the additives that are so far has not been revealed to the public. We need to know what are the constituents there, and we need to know how to treat them. So the industry have to work with the commission to provide this information, and then how we treat those constituents, and then what are the expected threshold standard to be established, and that should be established by the commission, not by the industry or by the agency who conducting those experiments.
So is this where you're talking about a third party to review what is being given to the state? I'm unclear about that.
I think, I mean, there are different mechanisms, but one of them would be a third party, independent party. I would say one of the universities in New Mexico, and I have no connection whatsoever. So I'm coming really an objective way. So and get them funding to be able to do that work and objectively, that they are not biased by industry, nor by environmental groups at the same time, and have them as a third party involved in the project. You can do call for proposal like we're doing in NSF and other federal agencies that have the capacity and the knowledge and the background to do that. And they would act as messengers from the commission to be able to monitor and to validate the result of this experiment.
Dr. Van Gogh, hold on just 1 second, please. If there's anyone in the room who has their laptop on and is not muted, please mute yourself. Turn off your sound entirely. We're thinking they've tried everything else they can think of to try to get rid of that echo online, and that's just a request they're making of folks in the room. Please mute whatever devices you have. Okay, all right, go ahead, Commissioner Fry.
So New Mexico State University, they have the Produced Water Consortium that is partnering with the state to collect data basically on produced water. They've produced high-level peer-reviewed papers. I'm wondering, is that the kind of partnership you're talking about? The kind of third party that would be involved with the any companies doing pilot projects?
Yes, as long as they don't get funding from the industry that make them biased, sure.
Okay, I think that clears up in my mind what you were meaning about third parties. So thank you very much, and thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is infuriating. All right, so we turn then, if there are no other commission questions, to the questions by the parties, and we begin with Mr. Wexler. Until they do have someone else they're calling in to help us with this sound issue. In the meantime, I can only ask you to speak slowly. Mr. Wexler?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Van Gogh. My name is Jeff Wexler. I represent NMOGA in this proceeding. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I have some questions about your testimony having to do with the Chiltepin recycling plant. And for reference, I'll point you to page 4, lines 11 to 14. I think that's where you start your discussion of this, although you mentioned it a couple times in your 8-page testimony. Is that right?
I believe so. I'm trying to understand what you're aiming to explicitly.
I'm just giving you a reference for the testimony you gave about the plant. That research was conducted at the Chiltepin recycling plant in Pecos, Texas. Is that right?
Yeah.
Are you aware that the facility was operated by Select Water?
I am not. We, in this process, we were focusing on the chemistry of the water, not on the all management that's surrounding how this water being used. We try to kind of separate ourselves from the management, how the water was asked before, how the water was reused and all that. We just focus only on the chemistry, what's in the water. The only information we got was water, and from various reasons. So the only information we got is the water themselves, which we analyze if the water being part pre and post treatment. That's the only information we got from this facility.
I'm going to follow up on that, Dr. Van Gogh. I think I understood everything you said, but there are some technical difficulties. Am I correct then that you looked at the water chemistry, but you did not evaluate how the water was being treated.
We have information about the treatment, which was suggested. What we understood, it was used by putting into an open reservoir, which basically aeration in the pit. And that was the method that we were informed on that, but not detailed information.
Are you familiar with the term fit for purpose treatment?
Sorry?
Are you familiar with the term fit for purpose treatment?
Term what? I cannot really hear you.
Fit for purpose?
Fit
Are you
for
familiar
purpose?
with that term?
Not really.
Do you understand the Chiltepin facility is a recycling plant? Is that right?
Yeah.
If I understood your answer to Commissioner Brankert's question, you're not aware of how the water from this facility was going to be used. Is that correct?
Yes, I think. Okay, go on.
Are you familiar generally with the term recycling facility?
Yes.
And so at a recycling facility, they subject the produced water to minimal treatment, and then they reuse the water for fracking fluid. Is that your understanding?
Just hold on. I have a call that I cannot answer.
Hold on, Dr. Van Gogh.
Yes.
So are you aware then that the water at the Chiltepin recycling plant was never intended to be discharged?
Again, we disconnect ourselves with the purpose of this water. So I cannot really answer your question yes or no, because we in purpose were because of different reason of the people at the plant, we were not to provide information about the reuse purposes or how this treated water were used further on. So I cannot really answer your question.
And so is that also, would you give the same answer if I asked you if you know whether the water was intended for reuse outside of the oil and gas industry?
That's what I keep saying, that I don't, because we were explicitly we're saying that this information is not available for us. We are only as part of the master student to understand the chemistry of this produced water.
You mentioned earlier, please finish.
So yeah, so that was the purpose of that, and to see how putting the water in a pit, this oil produced water in a pit, would have any effect on the organic constituents, on the total organic. We didn't go into specific for the organic in that study, and basically we saw no impact for this pit aeration.
Did you just say that you did not go or you did not study the inorganic constituents?
No, we analyzed the inorganic constituents and we measured the total organic carbon of this waste, of this produced water.
So talking about the treatment that occurred at this Chiltepin recycling facility, you understand that they did some minor treatment to remove hydrocarbons, right?
Yes. Again, without any knowledge about the purpose of this treatment and how it's going to be utilized.
They also treated the produced water to remove suspended solids.
Could be, yeah.
You don't know?
I am aware that obviously the occurrence of suspended solid, and aware of that those pit can reduce the suspended solid from produced water. Yep, like any other waste that we know that coming from any other sources.
In your testimony at page 4, you talk about total ammonia, nitrogen, ammonium, and inorganic constituents. You see that?
Yes.
The water at the Chiltepin recycling facility was not treated for total ammonia nitrogen, right?
Apparently,
The water at that facility was also not treated for other inorganic constituents, right?
we measure inorganic constituents. Yes.
I understand you measured it. What I'm saying is the facility did not actually treat produced water to remove inorganic constituents.
Apparently, that's the result showing.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wexler. Mr. Maxwell, do you have questions of Dr. Van Gosh?
Your Honor, my questions are asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
Dr. Van, could you put him back on the screen, please?
He will come back on the screen when he speaks.
Okay, thank you.
Just ask your questions.
Good afternoon, Dr. Van Gosh. My name is Liz Taylor, and I represent Select Water Solutions in this proceeding. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
And I just want to follow up on the recycling plant. And I've just had a couple of follow-up questions. I am looking at the master's paper that I believe you referred to before by your student, Carly Osborne. Do you have that?
I can get it. What is the question?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to remind you that I can't tell the page number on this one because I'm looking at my phone. On page 4 of the paper, I'm just going to read you a sentence and then I'm just going to ask you if you're familiar with that. And it says the plant, meaning this Chiltepin recycling plant, the plant was constructed to treat produced water for reuse for new hydraulically fractured wells, as it can be sold at a lower price than fresh water and save on disposal costs. It is with this intention that the technology is vetted, but not clear conclusion of treatment capability can be determined without testing samples with potential methods identified. Do you recall that from the paper?
I believe what you're saying is correct. I'm not. I don't see it in front of me right now, but I'm sure you're doing it, reading it correctly.
Thank you, sir. And so, with that understanding, then, would you agree with me that the purpose of the plant was to recycle water for use within the oil field for other fracking purposes?
Likely, but as we said, the objective
No,
of the
that's
study.
fine. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, do you have time to let him finish his answer? He was
Sure.
beginning it. Go ahead, Dr. Van Gosh.
No, I'm a bit stunned by your question and by your kind of intention. The idea of the study that we conducted was to see what's in produced water and if this kind of aeration does anything for the wastewater. There's no any intention nor evaluation, because we didn't get this information, how this wastewater is going to be performed. I understand what you're saying, that this water was not intended to be released outside from the waste from the oil and gas facilities. Maybe not, I don't know that, but we never got this information. But the point is that this type of pit aeration doesn't do anything in terms of the dissolved constituents in the oil produced water. And the point of highlighting this study is just to say what's in it. And that's, I think, the major issues that need to be mentioned to the committee, which is consistent with so many other studies that some of them were mentioned earlier about the constituents that occur in oil produced water.
So if the water is intended to be used for hydraulic fracturing, which is what the paper says, are you aware that its use would not be regulated by the Water Quality Control Commission?
I don't know about the ruling if wastewater can recycle for fracking should be regulated or not. I'm not aware of that.
Are you aware of New Mexico's Oil Conservation Division?
Yes, somehow,
And are you
in
aware?
general, yeah.
And are you aware that we call it the OCD, the initials for Oil Conservation Division? Are you aware that the OCD regulates use of produced water in the oil fields?
I'm not familiar with all this thing. No.
Okay. Now I'll just move on to another topic. You have testified that treated produced water should be evaluated for all chemicals at all stages of treatment. Is that correct?
Should be monitored for all the constituents that occur in oil-produced water, including those that we are not aware of them. Yep.
And at all stages of treatment, correct?
No, I'm not recall that I say in all stages. The point is that not a different stage of treatment, but rather what will be the final product that coming from the treatment.
All right, thank you. And you have said you're concerned about produced water that having organic and inorganic chemicals that may not be included in New Mexico's water quality standards, right?
Correct.
Have you reviewed New Mexico's surface water quality standards?
I believe I know that because I know the EPA aquatic life standard, which is the one that we use across the US for allowing waste to be disposed in surface water. And I know the constituents in this regulation, in this kind of rule of the, not rule, kind of guidelines, values of the EPA.
Likewise, have you reviewed New Mexico's groundwater quality standards?
I have not reviewed, but I'm familiar for across the country for all groundwater, for many states of the groundwater regulation, and definitely they are very overlapping across the state.
Would you agree with me that even if the standards do not address a particular constituent, that fact is irrelevant if the treated produced water did not contain that constituent?
Sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not exist. So there is many of those regulation, and that's my point, are having missing component that exists in oil and field produced water. And therefore using only them would miss the point and miss constituents that exist in oil and gas produced water. That is my major message, which is a common sense for everyone, I think, in this room to understand that if you have X and Y regulation of standard and the produced water has 100 more, that is a problem and you need to address those 100 that did not exist in the standard. Now you can have an opposite situation that some of the standard have values of constituents that not exist in the produced water, but that is kind of two sides for the same thing. That's why you need to tailor to be specific about the regulation of oil and gas produced water, about the standard that need to be developed.
So one constituent you seem to be particularly concerned about is radium. Is that correct?
One of them. Mm-hmm.
And are you aware that New Mexico's surface water quality standards have a standard for radium?
I know that the EPA have standard for drinking water, and so I'm sure that the drinking water in New Mexico will follow that.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you aware that New Mexico groundwater quality standards have a standard for radium?
It could be. I'm not aware again, I'm aware of other states. I'm not aware what is the value of the radium standard in New Mexico. I would assume that because of you have a lot of private wells, which are not regulated by the EPA drinking water regulation, the groundwater standard will follow the EPA regulation for drinking water for radium.
And then I just have, I think, one other area or a couple other areas. So I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. Let's assume hypothetically that there are known toxic constituents in treated produced water for which New Mexico has not yet adopted water quality standards. Okay. Is it your position that the proposed water reuse rule should be rejected by the commission until it contains proposed standards for those constituents?
So your hypothesis is kind of, I don't understand it. What do you mean? That all treated, so there is a miracle that all those constituents are removed from, I'm trying to understand what your question is.
No, sir, I'm asking about standards here. So you have said that your concern is that not all of the toxins and constituents of produced water have standards, right?
Right.
So let's assume that, and let's say that's the state of the art today, which is your contention. So as a
You're disconnect?
Oh, no, you haven't disconnected. I don't think. Were you on the microphone, Ms. Zanasi? Okay. I'm sorry. Make your objection again. It doesn't sound very amplified. Maybe bring it a little closer. Okay. Is
original one. Yeah.
It's not amplified. Was there a handheld out there? Thank you, Mr. Wexler.
She could make her objection here. Mine works. Awkward.
No? Okay. The second prayer is a microphone tester. No. All right.
Let me withdraw the question. Try again.
Okay. We're going to start over, Dr. Van Gosh.
Okay.
So, Dr. Van Gosh, let me just see if you understand my hypothetical. My hypothetical is that there are known toxic constituents in treated produced water, and New Mexico does not yet have water quality standards for those constituents. Okay?
Okay.
And then is it your position, based on that the proposed water reuse rule should be rejected by the commission until it contains proposed standards for those constituents?
I'm not sure I understand the hypothesis, but the second part of your question is yes, we need to know what's very simple. I don't know why you're making it so complicated. We need to know exactly what's in the oil produced water, and we need to know and to address accordingly what are the standards that need to be and standard and explicit standard that should be used after the treatment in order to make the oil produced water usable.
So then let me just ask one follow-up question. So in your opinion, is the proposed rule premature?
Is lacking some basic explicit language. That's what I mentioned. It's vague without the sufficient information of what is treated water and how you defined it and how you allow to be allowed to be reused.
Is it a simpler way to say that for me? Is the current rule as proposed incomplete?
I don't want to give names for anything. I just highlight the key aspect that I think this proposal is lacking is specification and not using vague kind of language, but rather have a very specific information about the contaminants and about the standards, and if possible, also about the method from which those contaminants can be removed as part of the treatment process.
And I have one final area. In your testimony earlier today, you seemed to be critical of the notice of intent process because it did not deal with the waste stream that would be produced from experimental projects. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I didn't hear any criticism of the NOI process itself, the information requested by the Environment Department in the process of the notice of intent process. Did I miss something?
Don't ask me about that. Ask them, I guess.
Oh, may I have just a moment? I need to grab my.
Yes.
Hello. Okay, yes. Okay, thanks.
Dr. Van Gogh, I want to direct you to the proposed rule, and it's this part 8, notice of intent process. And one thing it says is that so it's C2 under the notice of intent, and it says persons implementing demonstration projects or industrial projects shall submit to the department all research results, including lab analyses of all water contaminants in the untreated produced water. So if they're giving you lab analyses of all water contaminants, I'm sorry, in the untreated produced water, does that address your concern about knowing what is in the untreated produced water?
No, because you can do a lab would have a specific constituents that they can measure and will measure, but they miss a long list of other constituents that they don't have the capacity to analyze. So the rule should include all constituents a priori that provide guidelines to the entity that conduct the analysis and the measurement, what to measure. Because saying that you need to show what you have, you might not have enough. And that's one of the key aspects of when you're talking about oil produced water. You're only looking, as I mentioned in the beginning of my testimony earlier today, you are like in a dark cave and you're looking at the light, and what you see is not really the comprehensive information. We see only partial part of the constituents in oil produced water. And probably they also change over time as well. So it's even more complicated in that, since we know what's happened to flowback and all that. But theoretically, you can mix everything to get homogeneous solution, as mentioned earlier. But the point is that given the entity who conducting this experiment saying, okay, you do analysis and take us and send us and we look and see you're doing okay. First of all, you need to know who's going to oversee that. And second, they may miss critical constituents that occur in oil produced water without even without bad intention, just because they don't know. And therefore you declare as being treated wastewater, but in fact you don't, and you introduce a new contaminant or additional contaminant that you were not aware, and still call it a treated wastewater. So that's why this ruling have to be explicit in including as much as we know, and also demand from the industry to provide the unknown constituents that they know what's in the produced water, to make sure that we are able to do this monitoring. And given the complexity of that, I think that just providing lab analysis to the commission without some expert or really someone in the field that understand that, it's becoming just meaningless. You need to have someone in a real time to understand what the data is, and that's what my third-party verification notice that I mentioned earlier.
I just want to direct you to one more part of the rule, and that's under 400C, still notice of intent, under 1A, Part C, notice of intent, number 1A, and then Romanet, which is little 3 I's and 3 4's. And this is for any person who wants to do a demonstration project. So it's the person in control of the produced water. They have to give to the department information about the concentration of water contaminants in the untreated produced water used in the demonstration project. Now that would be the entity that wants to use the produced water that their company produces for a demonstration project. They're the guys who know what's in it, right?
They may not. That's the point. This company may missing some constituents that exist there. That's my point.
But they would be in the best position to know what's in the water, wouldn't they?
They may some knowledge, but not necessarily comprehensive.
But if they produce the water, just go with a hypothetical here. If they are the ones in control of produced water, putting the chemicals in for the fracking, analyzing the flowback water, and they know what's in it, they would be in the position to say what all the constituents and all the contaminants are in that produced water, right?
Objection. This assumes a fact that is not in evidence and it's actually incorrect. The rule says any person intending to use produced water. This doesn't say that they are the oil producer. That's not in the rule. So it's assuming a fact that's not in evidence.
All right. Do you want to rephrase your question, Ms.
Yes, ma'am. This is a hypothetical that let's say that the company which can be considered a person generally, the company that wants to have a demonstration project wants to have the right to have that demonstration project. Part of the requirements is to disclose all constituents in the produced water. Wouldn't you agree that they're in the best position and most likely know all of the constituents that are in the produced water that their company produced?
But if following your line of thinking, why those companies never revealed the information of the additive of hydraulic fracturing in the water? Why this information has not been revealed to the public? So why now?
Excuse me, doctor, that's not my question.
It is,
My
well, it's
question is-
relevant because if
No,
you
it's
say-
not. No,
Hold on.
I don't mean to argue with you here, but you're not answering my question.
I'm answering very well because they haven't done so. Why they would do it now?
Because there's a new rule that requires it, I would say. In order for them to have a demonstration project, they have to disclose all the constituents and contaminants in the produced water under this rule.
So that
Right?
would be kind of a hallelujah day because this hasn't been for the last how many years you have hydraulic fracturing in this country, so which information has not been revealed. So great, if this information would be revealed with all the constituents in this thing. And again, I want you to take your attention to the paper that was mentioned earlier that found other constituents that were not aware of the hydraulic fracturing. So even the oil company, as much as they know what's in the additive they put into hydraulic fracturing, they may not be aware of all other constituents that can be associated with that as well. So yes, that will be great if this information becoming available. But given that what we see from literature, from this peer review study, it seems that there are other constituents that were not even aware before And therefore, that's why we need a research. We need this third party of someone who understand and someone without a bias. And the key point for your question is you cannot let someone who control the water, own the water, and want to get rid of the water to conduct an objective scientific research. It doesn't work. It never worked before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Cox, do you have questions for Dr. Van Gosh?
No questions, Madam Hearing Officer.
Thank you. Mr. Hightower?
Dr. Vicos, I just have a couple of questions. In your testimony this morning, you mentioned that produced water should not be reused without very extensive treatment. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as extensive treatment, I think you mentioned that the treatment technologies that need to be used should be able to address things like salinity. Is that correct?
Among many others.
Right. I'm going to list a couple, and I'll just, instead of doing it all at once, I'll just go through these to show that there's 8 or 9 that probably are important based upon your testimony, I think. So one would be salinity. Is that true?
Salinity, you said?
Yes. Salts?
Yes. Yes.
Organics?
Yes.
Radionuclides?
Yes.
Ammonia, for example?
Ammonium, yes.
Yes.
It's the molecular of ammonium.
Some of the forever chemicals like PFAS?
It's mentioned earlier that was
Right.
only one study suggested that.
You also mentioned methyls?
Yep, there's a wide range of organics matter that's
Right.
part of the hydrocarbon and part of that.
And I think you also mentioned frac chemicals.
The additives that being
correct.
used.
That's right. So those are some of the analytes that you mentioned that need to be removed to through this extensive treatment system.
Objection to the form of the question. The actual testimony from Dr. Van Gosh is that there needs to be multiple treatments for different constituents.
And I agree that that's what he said. So if I didn't make that clear, I'm fine with that. So in the typical nomenclature of engineering and treatment, we generally call those a treatment train, where there are multiple steps that remove multiple sets of constituents to get to a final product, water. So the question is, in your talking about an extensive treatment system, then we're looking at some type of treatment train. Is that a fair analysis or assessment?
Well, I'm not sure about how you define it. You have to use multiple, obviously in sequence of methods in order to remove and having different technologies for remove the different constituents from this produced water. Yeah.
So you have multiple treatment processes to get to the level of extensive treatment that you believe is necessary. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned then that without this extensive treatment, the produced water should not be utilized. So a raw produced water is something that has had no treatment. Therefore, you would imply that that's water should not be used. We should only be using, I'll let you answer that question. I shouldn't do 2 questions. Is that true that raw produced water should not be utilized because it has not been treated?
Except for, as we talked previously about perhaps recycle into hydraulic fracturing activity within the facilities. But other than that, from my experience, from my scientific data that I've seen, for any time we see oil-produced water environment, we see impact, and the impact could be direct contamination of the water or even direct contamination of the soil, in which, for example, radionuclide will accumulate over time and generate a high radioactive site.
All right. And so as you've mentioned, then we're looking at extensive treatment for uses of produced water outside the oil and gas industry for whatever applications that those may be.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that that's fine. I think that Professor Thompson discussed that in detail. I do have one last question, and that was about the constituents of concern. And in industry, we generally talk about targeted analysis of constituents. Those are constituents that we know could exist in produced water. And you mentioned that those are important to analyze for the organics, the radionuclides. And then we find also in produced water, as you have noted, analytes or constituents that we maybe weren't aware of. And so in the analytical side, we often call that non-target analysis. So are you suggesting a non-target analysis needs to be conducted in conjunction with a targeted analysis of produced water?
Absolutely. I think you nailed it very well.
Okay, with that compliment, I'm going to end right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Mr. Davis. Thank you. Ms. Fox. Thank you. And Mr. Knight. I see him walking toward the dais.
Kind of adjust. Good afternoon, Doctor. My name is Andrew Knight. I represent the New Mexico Environment Department. And I just have a few questions. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Would you agree that the term treatment is an ambiguous term without reference to which contaminants you are concerned about and what the end goal of that treatment is?
I do.
You testified that research still needs to be conducted for determining potential treatment methods for produced water. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And I think the comment of the other gentleman for non-target constituents is really nailed it in a way that we think we know. We have a wide range of contaminants we know, but there are co-occurring other contaminants that we don't know that need to be screening and to make sure we're including them in the treatment process.
And would you agree with me that that produced water research projects should be prohibited from discharging to the ground or surface waters of the state?
As long as we don't know what's in there, definitely.
Would a rule that provides the framework to support research be beneficial so long as it prevented any discharges to ground or surface water?
Yes, and including also, as I mentioned earlier, a management of the waste streams that's coming from the treatment itself. So it have to be make sure that first that the treated water is not being released to the environment in any way, and B, that the waste stream is well protected and well managed.
Are you aware that New Mexico has spill reporting regulations?
I'm not sure I'm aware of what you mean by that.
Under the Groundwater Quality Act, the Commission has promulgated regulations requiring reporting and cleanup of spills of contaminants that could affect ground or surface waters. Are you familiar with those regulations?
No.
Are you aware that the New Mexico Water Quality Act also has provisions that cover falsifying data, and that those provisions include civil and criminal penalties for violations?
I have no idea about that.
I think in your, maybe not in your testimony, but in your answers to some of the commissioner's questions, you suggested that New Mexico should form a group of individuals to evaluate the scientific evidence available regarding produced water. Would the contaminants that this group would be evaluating, the contaminants that should be produced water should be screened for, would those include constituents that are used in the NPDES permitting program?
Well, yes, but this program is insufficient to address all the contaminants that are including in all produced water. So that's why it's kind of a very small number of constituents that should be included. But it just, as I mentioned earlier, those standards are insufficient. They are very limited, and it's not enough.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, for the chemistry of all produced water.
Would whole effluent toxicity also be an important methodology?
I believe so. If one of the depends what is the use, but yes, definitely. If is this going to have aquatic impact, that will be one of the way to include in those testing, definitely.
And as I believe you mentioned earlier, non-targeted analysis you feel is also an important methodology.
Absolutely.
Regarding laboratory analysis in the academic sphere, do academic researchers require a quality assurance plan, quality management plan, or equivalent to ensure that procedures, data integrity, and quality controls are implemented?
So now you're touching an interesting question. There are many certified, and I hope I'm not offending anyone in the room in my next sentences. There are many certified labs that's working on hundreds of thousands of samples and working also on cases. When you see contamination, you send it to the certified lab, which follow all those procedures that you mentioned, and you get kind of objective numbers. But the research lab, however, some of them are part of certified labs, some of them are not. But the quality of research that's conducted in those labs, I would say, is high and superior on the quality of analysis in commercial lab, because the people who work on that are dedicated, and it's being published in peer-reviewed studies. For example, when we measure radium, we were participated in a large program that measure radium in hundreds of labs across the US, and being able to compare the data between us. When we are part of the US Geological Survey, a monitoring program that send the same sample to hundreds of labs across the US, and we show that our analytical capacity is good and consistent with those other labs. So I would say we may officially not certified labs, but in terms of analytical and the quality of the data, I think in many of those research systems are as good, if not better, than those certified labs. I'm sorry for the long answer.
Yeah, that's fine. And finally, Is there a single standard that academic entities utilize that is equivalent to the EPA's requirements regarding quality assurance and quality control of laboratory analysis?
I'm not aware if there's a common tool. Usually it's conducted through, as I mentioned, a lab comparison, a national program that for different constituents. And basically, the prestige of a researcher depends on the quality of his or her research. And the people who are conducting it are not technicians, are PhD students, and all their future depends on the performance. But I'm not aware if there is a national-wide academic kind of criteria for performance of a lab.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Nasi, do you have any redirect?
I have just a couple of questions. Thank you. Dr. Van Gogh, thank you so much for your testimony. I know it's been a long day. I just wanted to ask you if you still had the rule pulled up and if you could go
I need to look for that. Maybe you write to tell me what there, so it will be easier for me.
Okay, well, in the rule, it says 20.6.8.400C. It says notice of intent, and then it says 1. Any person intending to use produced water for an authorized use under subsection B above shall submit to the Groundwater Quality Bureau of the Department a produced water notice of intent prior to use. Do you think that any person should be allowed to conduct experiments with produced water?
No, because I think you need to know. I think we are not there. I think it's kind of jumping into the future where all the regulation has been determined and all the standard has been set. Without that, we are kind of in a situation that, again, as I mentioned, the ruling is very vague. You need to be, I'm not even worried about who is the person, but I'm not worried what he or she or what this entity going to measure and to see. None of this is being specific, as I keep saying. So therefore, in this experimental, we are still in the research or experimental stage. It have to be conducted as research with all the peer review, with all the verification, with, as I mentioned, and so on. Once New Mexico will reach to the point that we know what's in produced water, how to treat it, and what's the standard of what we call treated produced water, and we have this ruling kind of becoming a very explicit, then the next stage is how to handle actual implementation of the ruling. But I think we are far away from this, as mentioned. I hope it's answered your question.
Thank you. Could you tell us, for the record, a picogram per milliliter? What is that measurement?
A picogram, so there are different types of water standard. So the common water standard for major elements in the water is milligram per liter, ppm. The next level for trace element is parts per billion. It's microgram per liter. And then the next level is ppt, is a nanogram per liter. Usually it's per liter, it's not for milliliters, so that's kind of a little bit confusing. So we should keep with the liter type. And then theoretically, after that, you can go to a picogram per liter which is one for, I think, 1 to 12 digit in terms of concentration.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Anasi, is there any reason not to excuse Dr. Van Gosh?
Dr. Van Gosh, thank you so much for all your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Van Gosh.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, shall we take a short break before we turn to the next witness, who I believe will be a NMOCA witness? Is that true? All right, so let's just take 10 minutes to 3:30.